The ship fell from the sky like a dying bird. Fire trailed behind it as it crashed into the frozen ground of planet Zarian 7. Ice and snow flew everywhere when the strange vessel hit the surface. Then everything went quiet, except for the sound of wind blowing across the empty wasteland. Inside the broken ship, Lyrelei Moonwhisper slowly opened her eyes. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Her pointed ears were ringing from the crash. She tried to move, but pain shot through. Her left arm, it was broken. Lyrelei was an elf. She had long silver hair and bright green eyes. Her skin was pale like moonlight. She wore a dark blue uniform with strange symbols on it. The uniform was torn now and covered in dirt and blood. She looked around the inside of her ship. Everything was broken. Sparks flew from damaged machines. The walls were cracked and twisted. Green liquid dripped from pipes above her head. This was bad. Very bad. Her ship was alive. Not like an animal, but it was made from living things that grew instead of being built. The elves made all their ships this way. But now her ship was dying. She could feel its pain through her connection to it. Soon it would be dead and she would be alone on this frozen world. Lyrelei tried to stand up. Her legs shook but held her weight. She walked to the front of the ship where the controls were. Most of the screens were dark. The few that still worked showed red warning signs. The ship had no power left. The communication system was broken. No one would hear her if she called for help. She looked out through the cracked front window. All she could see was ice and snow stretching to the horizon. Two pale suns hung in the purple sky. They gave almost no heat. This planet was dying, just like her ship. Something moved in the distance. Lyrelei squinted her eyes to see better. A figure was walking toward her ship. It was too far away to see clearly, but it looked like a person. But that was impossible. No one lived on this planet. The elves had checked before sending her here. Fear filled her chest. What if it was one of the attackers who shot down her ship? She had been on a secret mission when strange ships appeared from nowhere. They fired at her with weapons she had never seen before. Their shots went right through her shields like they were not there. Lyrelei grabbed her weapon from the floor. It was a long silver blade that glowed with blue light. Every elf carried one. She held it ready as the figure came closer. The person was definitely walking toward her ship. It moved slowly and carefully through the deep snow. As it got closer, she could see it was wearing thick clothes to keep warm. It did not look like the attackers. They wore black armor and moved like machines. When the figure was close enough, Lyrelei gasped. It was a human. She had seen humans before, but never up close. This one was a male. He had brown hair and a short beard. His face was red from the cold wind. He wore heavy boots and a thick jacket. The human stopped outside her ship. He raised his hands to show he had no weapons. Then he spoke. His voice was deep but gentle. "Are you hurt?" he called out. "I saw your ship crash. I want to help." Lyrelei did not know what to do. Humans were supposed to be dangerous. Her people taught her that humans were wild and could not be trusted. They lived short lives and made quick decisions without thinking, but this human seemed different. He looked worried about her. She decided to answer him. "I am injured," she said through the broken window. "My ship is dying." "My name is Jake Miller," the human said. "I have been stuck on this planet for 3 months. My ship was also destroyed, but I know how to survive here. You will die if you stay in that ship. The cold will kill you tonight." Lyrelei knew he was right. Already she could feel the temperature dropping as the two suns moved lower in the sky. Her ship had no heat. The living walls that used to keep her warm were dying. Soon they would be as cold as the ice outside. "Where can I go?" she asked. Jake pointed toward some rocky hills in the distance. "I have a shelter there. It is warm and safe, but we need to go now. When night comes, nothing can survive outside." Lyrelei looked at her dying ship one last time. She gathered the few things that still worked and put them in a bag. Then she climbed out through a hole in the wall. The cold hit her like a physical blow. The wind cut through her torn uniform and made her shiver. Jake was right. She would die out here without help. Jake walked over to her. He was much taller than she was. Most humans were bigger than elves. He looked down at her with kind eyes. "Can you walk?" he asked. Lyrelay nodded even though her arm hurt badly. Jake started walking toward the hills. She followed him through the snow. Each step was hard work. The snow was deep and the wind pushed against them. As they walked, Jake talked to her. "I am an engineer," he said. "I was working on making this planet better for people to live on. That's called terraforming. But something attacked my ship and I crashed here." "What attacked you?" Lyrelay asked. "I don't know," Jake said. "Ships I had never seen before. They were black and moved very fast. They shot at me with red beams." Lyrelay felt cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Those sounded like the same ships that attacked her. But why would they attack both humans and elves? They walked for an hour through the snow. Lyrelay's legs were getting tired and her broken arm hurt more with each step. But Jake kept encouraging her to keep going. "Not much further," he said. "You're doing great." Finally, they reached a small cave in the rocky hills. Jake led her inside. It was much warmer here. He had built walls to block the wind and had made a small fire. There were supplies stacked against the walls: food, water, tools, and other things he needed to survive. "This is my home now," Jake said with a sad smile. "It's not much, but it keeps me alive." Lyrelay sat down near the fire. The warmth felt wonderful on her cold skin. Jake brought her some hot soup in a metal cup. It tasted strange, but good. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jake looked outside where snow was starting to fall. The wind was getting stronger. Night was coming fast. "The temperature will drop to 60 degrees below zero tonight," he said. "I only have one sleeping bag. We will have to share it if we both want to live until morning." Lyrelay stared at him in shock. Among her people, sharing a bed with a stranger was something that never happened. It was too personal, too intimate. Elves only did such things with their life partners. But as the temperature continued to drop and the wind howled outside, she realized she had no choice. She would freeze to death without his help. "I understand," she said softly. Jake smiled and began preparing for the long, cold night ahead. The sleeping bag was made for one person, but Jake made it work for two. He laid it out near the fire and gestured for Lyrelay to get in first. She felt strange about this. In all her long life, she had never been so close to someone she barely knew. Elves lived for hundreds of years. Lyrelay was already 90 years old, though she looked like a young human woman. In that time, she had learned to keep her distance from others. Elves were careful about who they trusted. They took years to become friends with someone. But this was different. This was about staying alive. She slipped into the sleeping bag fully clothed. The inside was warm from Jake's body heat. A few minutes later, Jake carefully got in beside her. He stayed as far away as he could while still sharing the warmth. "I know this is strange for you," Jake said quietly. "But it's the only way we'll both survive the night." Outside the cave, the wind howled like a living thing. Lyrelay could hear ice hitting the rocks. The temperature was dropping fast. Even with the fire and the sleeping bag, she could feel the cold trying to get in. "Tell me about your world," Jake said. "It might help pass the time." Lyrelay was quiet for a moment. She had been taught not to share information about her people with strangers, but something about Jake made her want to talk. "My world is called Silvermere," she said. "Everything there is beautiful. We have silver trees that sing in the wind, crystal lakes that reflect the stars, cities built into living mountains." "It sounds amazing," Jake said. "How long have your people lived there?" "For thousands of years," Lyrelay replied. "We build things that last forever. We study the stars and learn about the universe. We try to live in harmony with nature." Jake was quiet for a while. Then he said, "My people are different. We're always moving, always building new things. We don't stay in one place very long. We like to explore and find new worlds." "That sounds dangerous," Lyrelay said. "It can be, Jake agreed. But that's how we learn and grow. We're not afraid to try new things, even if they might fail. Lyrelei thought about this. Her people were very careful. They planned everything, for years before doing it. They rarely took risks. Maybe that's why elves lived so long, but it also meant they didn't discover new things very often. Why were you alone on that ship? Jake asked. Lyrelei hesitated. She was carrying important information, but she wasn't supposed to tell anyone about it. Still, if she died on this planet, the information would die with her. Maybe it was better to tell someone. I was on a secret mission, she said slowly. I was carrying information about something dangerous, something that threatens both our peoples. Jake turned to look at her in the dim firelight. What kind of danger? The ships that attacked us, Lyrelei said. They're not from any world we know. They've been attacking both human and elf ships for months. They destroy everything and leave no survivors. Do you know who they are? We call them the Vorthak, Lyrelei said. They use technology we don't understand. Their weapons go right through our shields. Their ships are faster than anything we have. Jake was quiet for a long time. My ship wasn't just any ship, he said finally. I was carrying new technology, quantum processors that could make space travel much faster. Maybe that's why they wanted to destroy it. Maybe they see both our peoples as threats, Lyrelei said. Humans because you advance so quickly. Elves because we have ancient knowledge. The fire crackled and popped. Outside the storm was getting worse, but inside the sleeping bag they were warm and safe. The information I was carrying, Lyrelei said. It's still in my ship's computer. But the ship is dying. In a few days, the information will be lost forever. What kind of information? Details about where the Vorthak might attack next. Patterns in their movements. Weaknesses we discovered in their ships. Jake sat up slightly. We have to get that information. How? Lyrelei asked. The ship is broken. The computer is part of the living systems. When the ship dies, everything dies with it. Maybe not, Jake said. I'm an engineer. I know how to fix things. And I have some equipment from my own ship. It's different from your technology, but maybe we can make it work together. Lyrelei shook her head. Human technology and elf technology don't work together. They're too different. Maybe they are, Jake said. But I've never seen a ship like yours before. It's alive, right? It grows instead of being built? Yes. We grow our ships from special plants and animals. They become one living thing that can think and feel. That's incredible, Jake said. My people build ships from metal and computers. But what if we could combine them? Use human technology to keep your ship's brain alive? Lyrelei had never heard of such a thing. That's impossible. No one has ever mixed our technologies. Has anyone ever tried? Jake asked. She thought about it. No. My people think human technology is too crude, and humans probably think our technology is too strange. Well, we're going to try, Jake said firmly. Because if we don't, that information dies with your ship, and then both our peoples might die too. Lyrelei felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. This human was willing to risk everything to help save people he had never met. Her own people would spend years planning such a mission. Jake was ready to start tomorrow. Why would you do this? She asked. You don't know. Me. You don't owe my people anything. Jake was quiet for a moment. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. If someone needs help and I can give it, then I help. That's just who I am. Lyrelei stared at him in the firelight. She had been taught that humans were selfish and short-sighted. But Jake was proving everything wrong. He was kind, brave, and willing to sacrifice for others. I don't understand humans, she said. Jake laughed softly. Most of the time, we don't understand ourselves either. We just do what feels right and hope it works out. They talked through the night as the storm raged outside. Jake told her about Earth, about cities with millions of people, about oceans and forests and mountains. He talked about human music and art and food. Lyrelei told him about elf culture, about their long lives and careful ways. She described their magic, how they could sense the life force in all living things. She explained how elf ships were grown in special gardens over many years. As dawn approached, the storm began to calm. The fire had died down to glowing coals, but they were both still warm in the sleeping bag. "Thank you," Lyrelay said quietly. "For what?" "For saving my life, for sharing your warmth, for giving me hope." Jake smiled. "That's what friends do. Friends." Lyrelay had never made a friend so quickly before. Among her people, friendship took decades to develop. But something about this human made her feel safe and understood. "We should go look at your ship," Jake said as the first sunlight came through the cave entrance. "See what we're working with." Lyrelay nodded. She felt stronger now, ready to try the impossible. Maybe human technology and elf technology could work together. Maybe they could save the information that would save their peoples. And maybe, she thought as she looked at Jake preparing for the day ahead, she was learning something important about the value of trust. Outside, the two pale suns were rising over the frozen wasteland. But for the first time since her crash, Lyrelay felt warm. The morning sun gave little warmth as Jake and Lyrelay walked back to the crash site. Her ship looked even worse in daylight. The living hull was turning gray and cracking like old skin. Green fluid leaked from the wounds where metal had torn through the organic walls. Jake walked around the ship slowly, studying it with his engineer's eyes. He had never seen anything like it. The surface moved slightly, like it was breathing. Strange patterns flowed under the skin like veins carrying blood. "It's dying faster than I thought," Lyrelay said sadly. She placed her hand on the hull and closed her eyes. "I can barely feel its life force. Maybe 2 days before it's completely dead." Jake knelt down and opened a metal box he had brought from his shelter. Inside were tools and pieces of technology from his own crashed ship, computer chips, power cells, and strange devices that Lyrelay didn't recognize. "Show me where the main computer is," he said. Lyrelay led him to a section near the front of the ship. The wall here was thicker and pulsed with a faint blue light. "The brain is in there," she said. "But you can't just cut it open. If you damage it, all the information will be lost." "I'm not going to cut it," Jake said. He pulled out a small device that looked like a metal spider. "This is a neural interface. It's designed to connect with computer systems. Maybe it can talk to your ship's brain." "That won't work," Lyrelay said. "Human and elf technology are completely different. Your machines use electricity and metal. Our ships use life energy and living tissue." Jake smiled. "Sometimes different is good. Your ship thinks and feels, right? Well, this interface is designed to read thoughts and feelings too. It's how human pilots connect with their ships." He placed the device against the ship's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device began to glow with the same blue light as the ship. The hull under it started to change, growing around the device like it was accepting it. "That's impossible," Lyrelay whispered. Jake's eyes went wide. "It's working. The interface is making a connection." He pulled out a small screen and started typing commands. Numbers and symbols appeared on the display. "What does it say?" Lyrelay asked. "Your ship is trying to communicate," Jake said excitedly. "It's sending data through the interface. Look at this." On the screen, strange patterns appeared. They looked like the neural pathways of a brain, but mixed with computer code. It was like the ship was thinking in a language that was part organic, part digital. "I can see the damage," Jake said. "The ship's brain is still working, but the life support systems are failing. If we can boost the power to those systems, we might be able to keep it alive long enough to extract the data." Jake connected more devices to the ship. Power cells, processors, and cooling units from his crashed vessel. Each time he attached something, the ship's hull grew around it, making it part of itself. "This is incredible," Lyrelay said. "The ship is accepting your technology. It's making your machines part of its body." "More than that," Jake said, watching his readings. "It's improving them. Look at this power cell. It was almost dead when I connected it. Now it's charging itself using the ship's bioenergy." They worked for hours, connecting human technology to the elf ship's living systems. Jake would attach a device and Lorelei would use her connection to the ship to guide the integration. Slowly, the ship began to respond. The gray areas of the hull turned green again. The cracks started to heal. The blue light grew brighter and stronger. "It's working," Lorelei said with wonder. "The ship is getting stronger." But their success didn't go unnoticed. As they worked, Jake noticed something moving in the sky. Black dots that grew larger as they approached. "Ships," he said, pointing upward. "3 of them." Lorelei looked up, and her face went pale. "Vorthak, they've found us." The enemy ships were sleek and black, shaped like arrows. They moved with mechanical precision, no wasted motion. As they got closer, Lorelei could see their weapons charging with red energy. "We have to go," she said. "If they capture us alive, they'll torture us for information." But Jake was still working on the ship. "Not yet. I'm almost finished. If I can just complete this connection." The Vorthak ships opened fire. Red beams lanced down from the sky, hitting the ground around them. The frozen dirt exploded into steam and melted rock. "Jake," Lorelei shouted, "we have to leave now." "Done," Jake yelled back. He made one final connection and suddenly the entire ship blazed with light. Not just blue now, but silver and gold too. The hull rippled like water, then solidified into something that was stronger than before. The ship began to lift off the ground, not flying like a normal spacecraft, but rising like a living thing awakening from sleep. The wounds in its hull closed completely. The engines, which had been silent since the crash, hummed with new power. "Get inside," Jake called to Lorelei. They climbed through the entrance as another volley of red beams struck where they had been standing. Inside, the ship looked different. The walls still pulsed with life, but now they also showed human-style displays and controls. The two technologies had merged into something entirely new. Lorelei ran to what used to be the pilot station. Now it was something between a throne and a command chair, grown from living wood but embedded with metal controls. She placed her hands on the organic surfaces and felt the ship respond to her touch. But something was wrong. The ship was trying to lift off, but the systems weren't working properly. The fusion of technologies was still unstable. "I can't control it," she said desperately. "The human and elf systems are fighting each other." Jake looked at the displays showing the ship's status. Warning lights flashed everywhere. The Vorthak ships were getting closer, their weapons charging for another attack. "What if we both try to pilot it?" he suggested. "You handle the elf systems, I'll handle the human ones." "That's never been done before," Lorelei said. "It could kill us both." "If we don't try, the Vorthak will kill us anyway," Jake replied. He sat down next to her and placed his hands on the metal controls. Immediately, he felt a shock go through his body. The ship's consciousness touched his mind, alien but somehow familiar. Lorelei gasped. Through the ship's neural network, she could feel Jake's thoughts and emotions. His determination, his courage, his strange human optimism that believed everything would work out somehow. And Jake could feel her too. Her ancient wisdom, her deep connection to living things, her fear that was balanced by growing hope. Together, they lifted the ship into the sky. The Vorthak vessels immediately gave chase. They were faster than the hybrid ship, but Jake and Lorelei had advantages the enemy didn't expect. The ship could think for itself now, predicting attacks and dodging them with organic grace. It could also adapt, changing its shape and energy, signature to confuse enemy sensors. "They can't get a lock on us," Jake said, watching the tactical display. "The ship is thinking faster than their computers." But there were 3 enemy ships and only one of them. The Vorthak spread out, trying to surround them. Their weapons were more powerful than anything the hybrid ship could produce. "We can't fight them," Lorelei said. "We need to run." "Where?" Jake asked. "They'll just follow us." "To my people," Lorelei said. "If we can reach the elf fleet, they can protect us." Jake programmed the navigation system while Lorelei guided the ship toward the edge of the star system. Behind them, the Vorthak ships fired volley after volley of red energy, but the hybrid vessel danced between the beams like a living thing. As they reached the jump point that would take them to faster-than-light travel, Jake made a discovery that changed everything. "Lorelei," he said quietly. Look at the scanner readings. On the display, he could see not just the 3 ships chasing them, but dozens more hidden throughout the system. The Vorthak hadn't just followed them here. They were preparing for something much bigger. It's a staging area, Lyrelai whispered. They're gathering their forces for a massive attack. Jake counted the ships on the scanner. There are at least 50 of them, maybe more hidden beyond our sensor range. We have to warn our peoples, Lyrelai said. Both human and elf worlds are in danger. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Vorthak fleet behind, both Jake and Lyrelai realized that their unlikely partnership had become something much more important than survival. They had created something new, something that might be the key to stopping the coming invasion. But first, they would have to convince their peoples to work together, and that, they both knew, might be the hardest challenge of all. The journey through hyperspace took 3 days. During that time, Jake and Lyrelai learned more about their strange new ship. It was no longer just an elf vessel with human parts added on. It had become something entirely different, something that neither species had ever created before. The ship could think and feel like a living creature, but it could also calculate and process data like the most advanced computer. It grew new parts when it needed them, but it could also manufacture metal components. Most amazing of all, it seemed to understand both Jake and Lyrelai perfectly, responding to their thoughts and emotions as if it could read their minds. I think it can read our minds, Jake said on the second day. They were sitting in what used to be the ship's garden, where elf vessels grew food during long journeys. Now it was something between a greenhouse and a laboratory, with both plants and machines working together. Not read them exactly, Lyrelai said, but it's connected to both of us through the neural interface. It can sense our intentions and feelings. Jake looked at a display that showed the ship's internal systems. It's learning from us. Every time we make a decision, it remembers and gets better at predicting what we'll do next. That's not possible, Lyrelai said. Elf ships are grown with specific purposes. They can't change their basic nature. Well, this one can, Jake replied. Look at this. He showed her a scan of the ship's structure. Where there used to be separate elf and human systems, now there was something new. The organic and mechanical parts had grown together so completely that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. It's like the ship is evolving, Lyrelai said with wonder. That night, as they slept in the improved sleeping quarters that the ship had grown for them, Jake had strange dreams. He saw images that weren't from his own memories. Ancient cities with impossible architecture. Beings of light working with creatures of metal and crystal. Wars that lasted for millions of years. When he woke up, Lyrelai was sitting up too, looking confused and frightened. Did you have strange dreams? She asked. Yes, Jake said. Cities I've never seen. People that looked like they were made of light. I saw them too, Lyrelai said quietly. But those weren't dreams, Jake. Those were memories. The ship is showing us something. They went to the main control room where the ship's consciousness was strongest. As soon as they sat down, images began flowing through their minds again. But now they were awake and could understand what they were seeing. The images told a story that neither humans nor elves knew. Long ago, before either of their species existed, there was an ancient race called the Makers. They were beings of pure energy who could create life itself. They had built a vast civilization that spanned the entire galaxy, but the Makers grew lonely. They created 2 experiments to see if they could make beings like themselves. The first experiment was designed to be wise and long-lived, connected to the natural forces of life. These became the elves. The second experiment was designed to be adaptable and creative, able to change and grow quickly. These became the humans. We're related, Lyrelai whispered. Humans and elves come from the same source. The images continued. The Makers also created servants to help run their civilization. These servants were made of metal and crystal, designed to be logical and efficient. They became the Vorthak. For a long time, all 3 species lived together in harmony. The elves provided wisdom and connection to nature, The humans provided innovation and energy. The Vorthak provided order and stability. But something went wrong. A great disaster destroyed the Maker's civilization. The images weren't clear about what happened, but it seemed like the Makers themselves had disappeared, leaving their three creations alone in the galaxy. Without the Makers to guide them, the three species began to drift apart. The elves retreated to their worlds and focused on preserving what they could of the ancient knowledge. The humans spread out across the galaxy, exploring and building new things. The Vorthak became obsessed with order and began to see organic life as chaotic and dangerous. That's why the Vorthak are attacking us, Jake realized. They think we're a threat to the order they're trying to maintain. But there's more, Lyrelei said. The images were showing them something else. The separation of the three species wasn't just natural drift. The Vorthak had deliberately caused it by releasing a slow-acting weapon that made elves less fertile and more isolated, while making humans and elves suspicious of each other. They've been slowly destroying us for thousands of years, Lyrelei said with horror. That's why elf birth rates have been declining. That's why our two species rarely work together. Jake felt anger building inside him. They've been playing us against each other while they gathered strength for a final attack. The ship's consciousness seemed to respond to their emotions. More images flowed through their minds, showing them the truth about the weapon the Vorthak had used. It wasn't just a poison or a virus. It was something that attacked the very connection between living beings and the life force of the galaxy. But you're immune, the ship seemed to tell Jake through the neural link. Human adaptability has allowed your species to develop resistance to the weapon. And that's why sharing warmth works, Lyrelei said, understanding suddenly. Human contact can help reverse the weapon's effects. That's why I felt so much better after sleeping next to you. Jake looked at her with amazement. Your people don't just need to work with humans. You need to be close to us. Physical contact helps heal the damage the Vorthak weapon has done. The ship showed them one final set of images. The Vorthak fleet they had seen was not just preparing to attack elf and human worlds. They were preparing to activate a galaxy-wide version of their weapon, one that would drain the life force from every organic being in known space. How long do we have? Jake asked. The ship calculated quickly. 3 weeks before the weapon is ready, maybe less. They sat in silence for a while, absorbing everything they had learned. Then Lyrelei spoke up. We have to tell my people. The Elf High Council needs to know the truth. Will they believe us? Jake asked. Lyrelei thought about the ancient and traditional leaders of her people. I don't know. They've spent thousands of years believing that isolation is safety, learning that they need close contact with humans to survive. It goes against everything they've been taught. What about my people? Jake asked. Will they help? If they understand the threat, yes, Lyrelei said. Humans are good at working together when they face a common enemy. As they approached elf space, Jake felt nervous. He had never met other elves besides Lyrelei. What if they saw him as a contamination, as she had first feared? But he had no choice. The information they carried was too important to keep to themselves. Both species needed to know the truth about their history and the threat they faced. The ship dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of the elf star system. Immediately, elf patrol ships surrounded them, their weapons trained on the strange hybrid vessel. Unknown ship, identify yourself, came a cold voice over the communication system. Lyrelei activated the reply system. This is Scout Lyrelei Moonwhisper, returning from mission with critical intelligence. There was a long pause. Then, the voice came back sounding surprised. Scout Moonwhisper, you were reported as missing and presumed dead. Your ship's design does not match our records. I will explain everything to the High Council, Lyrelei said, but I must speak with them immediately. The safety of all elf worlds depends on it. Another pause. You will be escorted to Silvermere for debriefing. Any deviation from course will result in immediate destruction. As the elf patrol ships guided them toward the capital world, Jake looked at the beautiful silver ships around them. They were works of art, grown rather than built. shaped like flowers and birds and other living things. "They're beautiful," he said. "They're also very powerful," Lyrelai replied. "And the people who pilot them are not going to be happy when they see you." Jake took a deep breath. "Well, we've come this far. I guess we'll find out what happens when you bring a human home to meet your people." As they approached the gleaming world of Silvermere, both Jake and Lyrelai knew they were about to face their greatest challenge yet. Convincing two ancient, proud species to work together might be harder than fighting the Vorthak themselves. The capital city of Silvermere was the most beautiful place Jake had ever seen. Towers of living crystal grew from the ground like trees, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 moons. Silver bridges connected the towers and gardens filled, with singing flowers covered every surface. But as their ship landed in the center of the city, Jake could see that something was wrong. The streets were nearly empty. The few elves he could see moved slowly, like they were very tired. Many of the crystal towers were dark and some of the gardens looked sick and dying. "It's worse than I thought," Lyrelai said sadly. "The Vorthak weapon has been affecting my people more than we realized." Elf guards surrounded their ship as soon as it landed. They wore armor that looked like it was grown from silver bark, and they carried weapons that hummed with blue energy. Their leader was a tall elf with white hair and cold gray eyes. "Scout Moonwhisper," he said formally. "You will come with us immediately. The human will remain with the ship under guard." "No," Lyrelai said firmly. "Jake comes with me. The information we carry affects both our species. The High Council needs to hear from both of us." The guard captain looked disgusted. "A human in the council chambers? That has never been permitted. Many things that have never been done before will need to be done now," Lyrelai replied, "unless you want our entire species to die." The captain hesitated, then spoke into a communication device. After a few minutes, he nodded reluctantly. "The High Council will see you both, but the human will be restrained and watched at all times." They were escorted through the beautiful but dying city to the council chambers. Jake tried not to stare at everything around him, but it was impossible. Every building was a work of art. Every tree and flower seemed to glow with its own light. Even the sick and dying parts were more beautiful than anything on Earth. The council chambers were in the oldest part of the city, inside a massive tree that had been growing for thousands of years. The inside was carved with intricate patterns that seemed to move in the dim light. At the center sat 7 ancient elves, so old that their hair was white as snow, and their skin was pale as starlight. The leader of the council was a woman named Lady Alindra Starweaver. She looked at Jake with disgust and spoke in the ancient elf language which Jake couldn't understand. But through his connection to their ship, he somehow knew what she was saying. "Why have you brought this contamination into our sacred chambers?" Lyrelai responded in the same language. "Because this human has helped save information that will save all our lives." Lady Alindra switched to the common language so Jake could understand. "Speak then, young scout. But know that if this human has touched you or influenced you in any way, you will need to undergo purification rituals to cleanse yourself." Lyrelai stood straight and proud. "I will undergo no such rituals. This human saved my life when my ship crashed. He shared his warmth with me when I would have frozen to death. He helped me save the mission data when all seemed lost. And in doing so, we discovered truths that will change everything our people believe." "What truths?" asked another council member, an elf so old his eyes had gone completely white. Lyrelai and Jake took turns explaining everything they had learned. The ancient connection between humans and elves. The Vorthak weapon that had been slowly poisoning elf society for thousands of years. The coming attack that would destroy all organic life in the galaxy. When they finished, the council chamber was silent for a long time. Finally, Lady Alindra spoke. "Even if we believed this fantastic story, what would you have us do? Our fleets are scattered. Our people are weak. We have perhaps 1/10 of the ships we had a century ago. Work with the humans," Jake said, speaking for the first time. "Combine our technologies and our strengths. My people have large fleets and strong weapons. Your people have wisdom and knowledge. Together, we might be able to stop the Vorthak." Impossible, Lady Alindra said coldly. Elves do not mix with inferior species. We are pure. We are ancient. We do not need help from short-lived children who destroy everything they touch. Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. You're dying, he said quietly. Your cities are empty. Your people move like they're sick. Your birth rate has been falling for centuries. You can call us inferior if you want, but we're alive and growing stronger while you fade away. Several council members gasped at his boldness. Lady Alindra's eyes blazed with fury. How dare you? Speak to us that way. Because someone needs to tell you the truth, Jake replied. You're so proud of being pure that you're dying of loneliness. Lyrelei felt better after one night of sharing warmth with me than she had in months. That's not contamination. That's healing. Lyrelei stepped forward. He's right. I can feel the difference. Being close to Jake has made me stronger, healthier, more alive than I've been in years. The weapon affects us because it makes us isolated. Human contact breaks that isolation. You have been corrupted, Lady Alindra said with disgust. You think like a human now instead of thinking like an elf. Maybe that's exactly what we need, Lyrelei said. She looked around at the other council members. Look at yourselves. Look at our dying city. Look at our empty worlds. We've been so afraid of change that we've forgotten how to live. Outside, alarms began to sound. The crystalline walls of the chamber lit up with warning signals. A young elf messenger ran into the room. Lady Alindra, he gasped. Long range. Sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching. Unknown ships, hundreds of them. Jake and Lyrelei looked at each other. The Vorthak, Jake said. They've found us. Lady Alindra stood up, her face pale. How long do we have? 6 hours, the messenger replied. Our defense fleet can't stop that many ships, another council member said quietly. No, Jake agreed. But the human fleet can help if you let them. I can contact my people and tell them what's happening. Why would humans die for elves? Lady Alindra asked suspiciously. Because that's what friends do, Jake said simply. And because if the Vorthak destroy you first, we'll be next. Lady Alindra was quiet for a long moment. Around her, the other council members whispered urgently among themselves. Finally, she spoke. Very well. Contact your people. But know that if this is some human trick, you will die slowly and painfully. Jake used the hybrid ship's communication system to send a message to the nearest human fleet. He explained the situation as quickly as he could. To his relief, the human admiral didn't hesitate. We'll be there in 4 hours, came the reply. Tell the elves we're coming to help. As Jake finished the communication, Lyrelei made a decision that shocked everyone in the chamber. She removed her scout insignia and placed it on the floor at Lady Alindra's feet. I renounce my position in elf society, she said formally. I choose to become something new, neither fully elf nor fully human, but something that bridges both worlds. You cannot do this, Lady Alindra said angrily. You are an elf. You cannot change what you are. I can choose what I become, Lyrelei replied, and I choose to stand with those who value life over purity, cooperation over isolation, hope over fear. Jake stepped beside her. Then I make the same choice. I'm no longer just human. I'm something new too. Lady Alindra stared at them both, with a mixture of horror and fascination. You would throw away thousands of years of culture for this madness? I would save thousands of years of culture by letting it grow and change, Lyrelei said. Culture that cannot adapt will die. You've taught me that by example. Before Lady Alindra could respond, the Vorthak fleet arrived at the edge of the star system. The first wave of black ships moved toward Silvermere like a dark tide. The elf defense fleet rose to meet them, their beautiful silver ships graceful, as dancers. But there were only 20 elf ships against 200 Vorthak vessels. The battle was hopeless from the start. Then the human fleet arrived. 50 massive human battleships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons blazing. Unlike the elegant elf ships, the human vessels were built for war. They were ugly but powerful, covered with armor and bristling with guns, but even together, the human and elf fleets were outnumbered 4-1. The battle raged through space, around Silvermere, and slowly the defenders began to fall back. "We're losing," Jake said, watching the battle on the chamber's displays. "Not yet," Lyrelei said. She turned to Lady Alindra. "There is one way to win, but it requires something that has never been done before." "What?" "Let our ship connect to the elf fleet's communication network. It can coordinate both human and elf ships at the same time. Make them fight as one force instead of two separate ones." Lady Alindra hesitated. "That would require giving a hybrid ship control over our most sacred vessels. It would require trusting that change can make us stronger instead of weaker," Lyrelei said. Outside, another elf ship exploded in silver fire. Time was running out. Lady Alindra closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were filled with an ancient sadness but also a new kind of hope. "Do it," she said quietly. Jake and Lyrelei ran back to their ship. As soon as they activated the connection, the hybrid vessel's consciousness expanded to touch every ship in the combined fleet. Human and elf vessels that had been fighting separately suddenly began to move as one. The change was immediate and dramatic.